Welcome to the Deep Dive, and a special hello to everyone tuning in from Mr. Chi's Grade 10 Life Sciences class. We've actually tailored this deep dive just for you, hoping to make, well, a really huge topic feel a bit more manageable. Okay, let's jump right in. Today, we are tackling nothing less than the entire history of life on Earth. Quite a topic, huh? Our mission here is to take what often feels like a massive textbook chapter and just boil it down to the absolute key takeaways. We want to give you a kind of shortcut to understanding how scientists actually figure out our planet's epic story, spanning billions of years. We'll cover how we know this stuff, the tools they use, right up to the big dramatic events that have shaped all the life we see around us.
It really is remarkable, isn't it, how scientists can reconstruct all that history. I mean, we're talking billions of years pieced together from clues hidden in rocks and the way continents are shaped, even in living things today. It's like solving the biggest jigsaw puzzle you can imagine. It takes some really clever tools and, frankly, a lot of careful thinking, deductive reasoning to connect those dots.
That's a great way to put it, a giant puzzle. And it makes you wonder, how sure can they be, with clues scattered everywhere? So, before we get into the what happened, let's talk about the how. How do scientists figure out events from millions or even billions of years ago? It's not like they have a DeLorean parked somewhere.
No time machine, sadly. But they do have some incredibly powerful tools. The main one is probably the geological timescale. Think of it like Earth's official calendar. It's this huge chronological chart organizing all the major geological shifts, climate changes, and crucially, it shows how those big events influenced life, which species popped up, which thrived, and, well, which ones disappeared.
Right, and it's such a vast amount of time, they have to break it down, don't they?
Exactly. The biggest chunks are called eons. These can last 1 billion years, sometimes more. Then, within eons, you have eras. Things like the Mesozoic era, the age of dinosaurs. Eras don't have a fixed length. They're defined by major changes in the types of fossils found. So, the Mesozoic, for instance, went from about 252 million years ago down to 66 million years ago. And then eras are split into periods, often defined by even more specific fossil evidence in those rock layers.
And here's something from our source material that really makes you think, this idea of the geological clock.
Yeah.
Get this. If you imagine Earth's entire 4.5 billion year history as a single 24-hour clock, all of human existence, maybe 2 million years or so, it's less than a minute before midnight.
Wow.
It really puts things into perspective, doesn't it? Our whole time here is just a tiny, tiny fraction of Earth's story.
Absolutely humbling. Another huge piece of the puzzle is understanding continental drift. This is the idea that the continents weren't always where they are now. They've been slowly moving, breaking apart, colliding over millions of years. It's driven by plate tectonics, the study of how the Earth's crust, these giant plates, sort of float and jostle around.
Okay, continents moving sounds pretty wild. How do we actually know that happened? What's the evidence?
Well, what's really fascinating here is how biogeography gives us clues. That's just the study of where plants and animals live and where their ancestors lived. So imagine finding fossils of the exact same ancient reptile, like Mesosaurus, in both Brazil and South Africa.
Okay, places really far apart now.
Exactly. The best explanation is that those land masses were once joined together. Or take Lestrosaurus, its fossils pop up in South Africa, South America, India, Australia, and Antarctica, all in rocks from the same time period.
That's incredible.
It is. Even things like certain types of ancient earthworms are found in both South America and Africa. Plus, the continents themselves kind of look like they fit together, especially South America and Africa.
Like puzzle pieces.
Precisely. And then there's evidence from ancient glaciers deposits found across multiple southern continents that point to them once being part of a single giant landmass we call Gondwana.
So all this evidence points to a time when pretty much all the land was one giant supercontinent.
That's the idea. We call it Pangaea. It existed way back, but started breaking up around the beginning of the Mesozoic era. And the breakup wasn't all at once. It happened in roughly 3 main stages. First, about 175 million years ago, it split into Laurasia in the north and Gondwana in the south.
Okay.
Then a bit later, Gondwana started splitting apart into the continents we know today, Africa, South America, India, and so on. And finally, Laurasia split up too, and the Atlantic and Indian Oceans really started to open up. These movements had huge impacts on where life could go and how it evolved.
Which brings us neatly to fossils. These are like our direct snapshots from the past, right?
Absolutely. A fossil is basically any remain or trace, like a footprint, of something that lived a long time ago, usually older than 10,000 years. And the whole science of studying these ancient organisms is paleontology.
But getting fossilized is actually super rare, isn't it? It's not like everything that dies turns into a fossil.
Oh, incredibly rare. A whole lot of things need to go just right. First, the organism dies. Hard parts like bones or shells preserve much better than soft stuff.
Makes sense.
Then the key thing is rapid burial. It needs to get covered by mud, sand, or volcanic ash really quickly. This seals it off from oxygen, which slows down decay massively.
Okay, so quick burial is crucial.
Yep. Then, over time, more sediment piles on top, the pressure builds, and eventually that sediment turns into rock. Sometimes the original bone dissolves, leaving a hollow mold. Or mineral-rich water seeps in and either fills the mold, creating a cast, or replaces the original bone material bit by bit.
So it becomes like a rock replica.
Pretty much. And then, after potentially millions of years, geological forces might push that rock layer back up to the surface and erosion wears it away, eventually exposing the fossil for someone lucky to find.
It really sounds like winning the lottery, finding one.
It kind of is. Think of all the organisms that just vanished without a trace.
So, okay, we find a fossil. Amazing.
Yeah.
But how do scientists know how old it is? That seems like the really tricky part.
It does seem like magic, but it's very clever science. There are two main approaches. The first is radiometric dating. This uses the fact that certain elements have unstable versions called isotopes. Think of them as atoms with slightly different weights.
Okay, isotopes.
These unstable isotopes decay. They change into more stable elements at a very precise, predictable rate. We measure this rate using something called a half-life. The half-life is just the time it takes for half of the unstable atoms in a sample to decay.
Right. I remember half-life from chemistry.
Exactly. So for relatively young fossils, things up to maybe 50,000 years old, we can use radiocarbon dating. It looks at carbon-14. See, living things absorb carbon-14 from the atmosphere. When they die, they stop taking it in, and the C14 they already have starts to decay into nitrogen-14.
So you measure how much C14 is left.
Precisely. The half-life is about 5,730 years, so by measuring the remaining C14, we can calculate when the organism died.
Well, what about really, really old stuff, like dinosaur fossils?
Good question. For those, C14 is long gone. So scientists use isotopes with much, much longer half-lives. Things like uranium-lead dating or potassium-argon dating. These have half-lives of hundreds of millions or even billions of years. They don't usually date the fossil itself, but the layers of igneous rock, like volcanic ash found above or below the fossil.
Okay, so they date the surrounding rock layers.
Yes, because when that volcanic rock forms, it locks in those radioactive isotopes, starting the clock ticking right then.
Clever. And the second method?
The second is relative dating. This is simpler. It's about figuring out the order of events. Basically, in layers of sedimentary rock, the deeper layers were laid down first, so they're older. Fossils found deeper down are generally older than fossils found in shallower layers.
So older stuff at the bottom, younger stuff at the top.
That's the principle. This was actually how scientists first started building the geological timescale long before radiometric dating was developed, especially when you don't have those handy volcanic layers.
So putting it all together, the time scale, the moving continents, the fossils, the dating, it's not just random facts, is it? There's a logic to how they build the story.
Absolutely not random. It's all about deductive reasoning, like being a detective. Scientists take all these different lines of evidence, the fossils, where they're found, the age of the rocks, what the climate might have been like, how evolution works through natural selection, and they weave it together into the most logical, coherent explanation for what happened.
And sometimes they find fossils that seem to bridge the gap between different groups of animals.
Exactly. Those are incredibly important. We call them transitional fossils. A transitional fossil is one that shows characteristics of both an ancestral group and a more derived later group. They're like snapshots of evolution in action.
Like the famous Archaeopteryx.
Perfect example. Archaeopteryx has feathers and a wishbone like a bird, but it also has teeth, claws on its wings, and a long bony tail like a dinosaur, specifically the theropods.
So it links dinosaurs and birds.
It provides really strong evidence for that evolutionary link. Yeah, it's a beautiful example of a transitional form.
Okay, so now that we have a handle on how scientists figure all this out, let's actually walk through the story itself, the journey of life through the major eras. And we'll make sure to point out some cool Southern African connections for all you life sciences students listening.
Let's do it. We start way, way back in the Precambrian era. This is an immense stretch of time. It includes the Hadean eon, right after Earth formed about 4.6 billion years ago. The planet was molten, then cooled, oceans started forming, the first atmosphere, and somehow, amid all that, complex chemical reactions got going, eventually leading to the first self-replicating molecules, the precursors to life.
Incredible beginnings.
Then comes the Archean eon. This is where we see the first definite signs of life, single-celled organisms. The atmosphere back then had almost no free oxygen. It was mostly volcanic gases. But then, a crucial development. Prokaryotes evolved, and among them, around 3 billion years ago, were cyanobacteria.
The ones that do photosynthesis.
Exactly. And photosynthesis releases oxygen. So these tiny microbes started pumping oxygen into the atmosphere, fundamentally changing the planet forever.
Wow. Little organisms having such a massive impact.
Huge impact. And these early cyanobacteria often formed colonies, trapping sediment and building layered structures called stromatolites. These are some of our oldest fossils. And what's really neat is you can find ancient stromatolites right here in South Africa, like at Wondergat in the Northwest Province.
That's amazing local evidence from billions of years ago. Okay, so after this long stretch of early life, things suddenly sped up. The Cambrian explosion.
Yeah, it's often called an explosion because, relatively speaking, over about 50 to 80 million years, starting around 580 million years ago, we see a dramatic increase in the diversity and complexity of life in the fossil record.
Like a burst of creativity.
Kind of. Suddenly, we see the first evidence of most of the major animal groups, the phyla, that exist today. All appearing in the oceans, there was still no life on land yet.
Why not on land?
Well, one key factor was the lack of an ozone layer to shield life from harmful UV radiation. That layer was still forming, paving the way for later colonization of the land.
Got it. So after the Cambrian explosion.
We enter the Paleozoic era, the era of ancient life. Running from about 542 to 251 million years ago, a lot happened here. The supercontinent Pangaea actually came together during this time. In the oceans, we saw the first fish, which are chordates, that's our own lineage.
Our distant ancestors.
Pretty much. Animals with shells and exoskeletons, like the famous trilobites, were everywhere. And crucially, this is when plants first colonized land, maybe 430 million years ago. They evolved from algae. This led to the first forests, which dramatically changed the atmosphere again, boosting oxygen levels.
So plants moving onto land was a huge deal.
Massive. Then came the first insects. Some even evolved wings. And then amphibians, followed by early reptiles like the synapsids, sometimes called mammal-like reptiles because they're on the lineage leading to us, started moving onto land too. Towards the end of the Paleozoic, gymnosperms plants with seeds, like conifers, became the dominant plant life.
So life is really diversifying, spreading onto land. But the Paleozoic didn't end quietly, did it?
Not at all. It ended with the biggest bang in the history of life, the Permian-Triassic extinction event. This was the most devastating mass extinction we know of. Something like 96% of all marine species and 70% of land vertebrate species went extinct. It was almost a total wipeout.
Unbelievable. 96%. And again, South Africa has fossils from this Paleozoic era.
Oh, yes. A fantastic record. Near Grahamstown and Port Alfred, you find fossils of early land plants, club mosses, lycopods, early gymnosperms. And the Karoo is famous for the Glossopteris flora. This plant was widespread across Gondwana, and finding its fossils in places like South Africa, India, and Australia is key evidence for continental drift.
Right, connecting the continents.
Absolutely. You also find marine fossils like ammonoids in KwaZulu-Natal, and we have living fossils from this time too, the cycads. These plants have been around for over 280 million years. They're basically unchanged. They're protected here in South Africa now because they're so ancient and rare.
Living history right there. Okay, so after the Great Dying, life recovers, and we enter the Mesozoic era.
That's right, from about 251 down to roughly 66 million years ago. This is the famous age of reptiles.
Dinosaurs.
Dinosaurs dominated the land for something like 135 million years. It's hard to even grasp that length of time. Meanwhile, pterosaurs flew in the skies, and marine reptiles like ichthyosaurs swam in the oceans.
So reptiles ruled everywhere.
Pretty much. Pangaea was breaking up during this time, continents were drifting apart, the climate was often warm, sometimes fluctuating wildly, and importantly, the very first birds evolved during the Mesozoic, branching off from theropod dinosaurs, Archaeopteryx being that key link we mentioned.
And plants, still the gymnosperms.
Yep, gymnosperms like cycads and conifers were still dominant land plants. Think Jurassic Park landscapes.
But like the Paleozoic, the Mesozoic also ended with a massive extinction event.
Indeed. The boundary between the Mesozoic and the next era, the Cenozoic, is marked by the Cretaceous-Paleogene extinction event. This is the one that famously wiped out the dinosaurs, along with about half of all species on Earth.
And again, South Africa provides some key fossils from the Mesozoic.
Absolutely. We already mentioned Lystrosaurus, that mammal-like reptile from the Karoo found just after the Permian extinction. Its discovery across multiple continents was just huge for confirming continental drift. And then there's the amazing story of the coelacanth.
Living fossil fish.
Exactly. Scientists thought it died out with the dinosaurs 66 million years ago. Then, boom, in 1938, a fisherman catches one off the coast of South Africa.
Mind-blowing.
Totally. And what's fascinating is its fins, they're fleshy, lobe-like, almost like primitive limbs. It's considered a link between fish and the first four-legged amphibians.
Wow. Okay, so the dinosaurs are gone. What happens next?
We enter our current era, the Cenozoic era, starting 65 million years ago. This is often called the Age of Mammals. With the dinosaurs gone, mammals, which had been around but were mostly small and hiding in the shadows, underwent this incredible diversification. They spread out, evolved, and filled all those empty ecological roles.
So mammals took over.
They really did. Continents continued to move into their present positions. Africa spent some time as an island before connecting with the Middle East and Europe. The climate generally cooled down over the long term after an initial warm phase. And a really important development in the Cenozoic was the evolution of grasses.
Grass. Seems ordinary.
But it changed the world. Grasslands expanded massively, creating whole new ecosystems. This drove the evolution of grazing animals, and in turn, the predators that hunted them, lots of fast runners.
Yeah, that makes sense. And this era,
This is where we come in, right?
this is it. It's during the Cenozoic era, relatively recently in geological terms, that our own lineage, the hominins, evolved, leading eventually to Homo sapiens, modern humans. And South Africa is famous for fossils related to human evolution too, isn't it? The cradle of humankind.
Absolutely. Places like Gauteng, Northwest, Free State, KZN, Limpopo, they've yielded incredibly important fossils of early humans and our ancestors. It's a world-renowned hotspot for understanding our own origins.
Okay, we've touched on these massive extinction events a few times. They seem like really pivotal moments in the story.
They absolutely are. A mass extinction is defined as a period where a huge percentage of species disappear globally in a relatively short amount of geological time. There have been 5 really big ones generally recognized in the fossil record: the Ordovician-Silurian, the Late Devonian, the Permian-Triassic, the biggest one we talked about, the Triassic-Jurassic, and the Cretaceous-Paleogene, the dinosaur killer.
5 major resets.
Pretty much. And what's fascinating in a way is that while they were catastrophic, these events also opened up opportunities. By wiping out dominant groups, they allowed other groups to diversify and fill those empty niches. Evolution kind of rushes in to fill the vacuum.
So what causes them? Is it always the same thing? Asteroids.
Well, that's the big debate. For a theory about a mass extinction to be convincing, it has to explain why so many different kinds of life died out, why some things survived, and it needs to be linked to a plausible natural event around that time.
Right. It has to fit all the evidence.
Exactly. For the Cretaceous-Paleogene extinction 66 million years ago, the source highlights 2 leading hypotheses. First is the impact theory. This points to that massive asteroid, maybe 10 kilometers wide, hitting the Yucatan Peninsula in Mexico. We see the crater Chicxulub.
I've heard of that one.
The impact would have been unimaginable. Massive earthquakes, tsunamis, widespread fires, tons of dust and soot thrown into the atmosphere, blocking sunlight.
Stopping photosynthesis.
Yes, causing ecosystems to collapse. Plus acid rain, maybe triggering volcanic eruptions. Just a global catastrophe.
Okay, that sounds convincing. What's the other idea?
The other main suspect is massive volcanic activity, specifically enormous prolonged eruptions in a region called the Deccan Traps in modern-day India. These eruptions lasted for perhaps 500,000 years, around the time of the extinction, spewing out colossal amounts of volcanic gases like CO2 and sulfur dioxide.
Which would mess with the climate.
Hugely. It could cause rapid global warming or cooling, ocean acidification, acid rain, basically making the planet uninhabitable for many species.
So asteroid or volcanoes? Or maybe both?
It's entirely possible it was a combination, a kind of 1-2 punch. Scientists are still actively researching and debating the exact sequence and importance of these events. It's complex stuff.
Which leads to a slightly worrying question. Are we in the middle of another one right now?
That's a question many scientists are asking, and frankly, the evidence is concerning. Many argue that we are indeed entering, or already in, the 6th mass extinction. The current rate at which species are disappearing is estimated to be hundreds, maybe thousands of times higher than the natural background rate seen in the fossil record.
And this one, it's different.
It seems to be. The primary drivers identified are overwhelmingly linked to human activity. Things like habitat destruction, climate change, pollution, overhunting, invasive species, all consequences of our expanding population and resource use.
The source mentioned a specific example.
Yes, the golden toad from Costa Rica, a beautiful amphibian declared extinct in 1989. Its disappearance is linked to factors like climate change altering its cloud forest habitat, possibly combined with a fungal disease. It's seen as a kind of canary in the coal mine. The estimated rate is staggering, maybe 140,000 species per year, lost since around 10,000 BC, accelerating now.
Wow, that is a lot to take in. What an incredible journey we've covered, though, billions of years. From those first tiny cells, through the Cambrian explosion's burst of diversity, the ages of fish, plants colonizing land, the reign of dinosaurs, their dramatic exit, the rise of mammals, and finally, our own human story emerging. And we've seen how scientists use these amazing tools, the geological clock, tracking drifting continents, decoding fossils, dating ancient rocks to piece together this grand narrative with clues found right here in southern Africa. We really hope this deep dive has helped you, especially those of you in Mr. Cheese class, get a solid handle on this epic history of life.
Absolutely. And it's more than just a list of dates and extinct creatures, isn't it? It's a story about constant change, about adaptation, resilience, but also vulnerability. It really underscores how interconnected everything is. Understanding this deep past, this immense timescale of change and extinction is so important for how we view our own place in the world right now.
It really is. Which brings us to a final thought to leave you with. If scientists are right, and we are currently driving a sixth mass extinction, and having looked back at the immense natural forces that have reshaped life before, what does that tell us about our responsibility? What can we learn from Earth's deep, often turbulent history to help us navigate the future and protect the incredible biodiversity we still have? Something to think about. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive.